Thank you. And it's a real pleasure to be here. And my dear colleague, Dr. Phillips, of course, is on your board and has told me a great deal. And I think this is a wonderful program and a wonderful opportunity. Well, it's a moderately long story, but when I was in my fellowship at Duke University, we were creating holes in the heart called with the balloon septostomy catheter. And then when I went to the Air Force, I actually had the opportunity to remove embolize the catheter that broke off from the neck and floated into the heart. And I was able to retrieve it. And that was the first time that had ever been done. 4 previous similar cases had to go to heart surgery. So as a fella, I began to think, why can't we fix holes in the heart, atrial septal defects in the top half, ventricular septal defects in the lower half, or the ductus, which is a connection outside the heart. But when I queried my colleagues and fellow doctors, the answer was always, it can't be done. So I went to the Air Force, and that's where I ran into the patient encountered the patient with the embolized catheter. And I was able to do that very quickly. And it just made me know that we could do this. So as I was leaving the United States Air Force, I was being interviewed at various places around the country. And one of the places was the Ochsner Clinic. And during that interview, I met a doctor by the name of Noel Mills, who was quite young looking to me. I thought he couldn't be a heart surgeon, but he really was. And I thought I'd make the interview pretty quick and over probably because everybody said it can't be done. But I said, Dr. Mills, do you think we can close holes in the heart with a catheter? And lo and behold, he jumped up, ran over to a drawer, pulled out a bunch of catheters with disc on them. And he'd been working when he was at the University of New York, New York with these devices. And he said, not only do I think it can, I think we can do it. And I went to the Ochsner Clinic because he said it could be done. So when I was leaving the Air Force, I was laying in the bed. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning. And I said, what is small enough to pass through a catheter that is big enough when in place inside the heart and open would close a hole? And it dawned on me, voila, an umbrella. So with that, that let me leap across. Now I knew I had a way of doing it because I'd been trying to figure out how I was going to do this. And so I went to the Ochsner Clinic, and they very graciously funded this project and encouraged the project. And then I had an uncle at LSU who was an electrical engineer, and he was a professor. And I called him and asked him, could he find me a machinist that could make really tiny umbrellas? And I had envisioned 2 umbrellas coming together and snapping together. And 2 days later, he called me and said, I found this very wonderful machinist. And I drove down up to Baton Rouge, actually, and met with him in the Student Union Center and drew on the paper napkin my concept of the cardiac umbrellas. And no, I did not. And I was so upset. My wife and my children were with me. And so when he told me that he could do this, I was just, I didn't care what I did with the napkin, to be honest about it. But anyway, we started with that. We made some embryonic devices. They worked terribly. We had to create models in experimental canines to make the defect and then close the defect after we recovered them. But anyway, long story short, from September when I got there to mid-December, we went through two devices. The second one I used in mid-December 1972. I actually closed a defect in a dog's heart during cardiac catheterization. And so the room just exploded when that happened. It was incredible. Our research was then learned of by Edwards Laboratory in Santa Ana, California. They asked us to fly out there, and the head of the institution, Russ Jordan, who was CEO and president of the foundation, we flew there and they started working with us. And we developed what was ultimately the King Mills umbrella device, which was first used in human patients in the mid-70s. So that's how it came to pass. It was an exciting time because this had never been done. It didn't take the heart lung machine was, when I went to medical school, was only 10 years old being used. So heart surgery was king of the hill. And there was some criticism of this when we actually did it, because heart surgery was so successful that it seemed that we didn't need to have this. But a driving force for me was I thought about these young ladies getting these sternotomies and then having those the rest of their life, the incision that you get when you have open heart surgery from the front. And I just didn't think we needed that. There were other reasons, of course. But be that as it may, with God's help and Dr. Mills and the institution and support there, we were successful in doing this. So that was a really important and difficult thing, because we didn't have echo, we didn't have CT, we didn't have MRIs. I had to develop a technique where we inflated balloons in the heart and stuck them in the hole and sized the hole. And then we had to figure out how to locate the hole. So we knew it was in the middle of the wall between the two upper receiving chambers. And then we had to develop a device, because we could not center in the middle of the hole. We had to develop a device that would be about 2 times the diameter of the defect, so we would know for sure we closed it. That presented a problem, because if it's too big, you're not going to get it closed. But how we closed them, it was like a snap on your coat. It was a snap. One umbrella slid into the other one, and both are hooked to catheters. We carried them into the heart through a capsule, and I exposed one on the left side, and it was automatically open. That was a giant step, because it had a silicone ring that would allow the umbrella to open. Then I'd pull it back against the hole, and then I'd pull the capsule that carried the right umbrella into the right side of the heart. I'd expose the right heart umbrella. I would slide them together and then snap them together. I could feel when they snapped, and we could hear the snap by putting the stethoscope on the chest. So there were 2 things we did to make sure it was snapped. And then I would jiggle the catheter and make sure that the umbrella stayed in place. And I'd release the right side, because I had a wire running through it all the way to the left side. So if they weren't locked, I would know that. And then we would know we were not in a fail-safe position. But this stayed, I jiggled it again, and they stayed locked. And then I unscrewed the left side, and there it was. So it's twice as big as a hole, and they have struts made of stainless steel and Dacron. There are different things we use today, but it just stayed there perfectly, and it's been there in 4 of them that are alive of the original 5 for about 200 years, patient years. Yes, yes. There are plenty of pictures of this and innumerable textbooks around the world about these devices. Yes.